Hello, hello. Success. AJ, Amy, hello, hello. Okay, we're going to restart here. 7-Eleven. Thank you for bearing with me. Okay. Welcome back. Sorry for the awesome, Mark. Glad you're here. Thank you. So we can jump into it. So I got a little outline for today. We're gonna just do a quick review of this first week, and then I've got a few questions from folks that Marty and Barry, excellent. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. We'll do a quick review of the week. We'll answer the handful of questions that we got. Then we'll talk about mindfulness and stress reduction and what this next week is going to be like. So thank you. Thanks for bearing with me with the technical difficulties there. This is all fairly new stuff for me, and glad that we seem to be on track here. Oh, Della, hello. How are you? Welcome. So this first week, we really focused 100% on our practice, on the 101s, what we needed to know. You know, we talked through our posture, our breath, what we're going to be doing with our mind, the practice of counting the breath. We talked about acceptance. We talked about just easing into the practice. And we talked a little bit towards the end of the week about habit formation and really making an effort to make this a part of our life. All right. I got great feedback. It seemed like some of the cohorts clicked. A few people needed to move around. It seems like there's some good discussions going there. So if you haven't yet, it's a great idea to check in with your cohort mates. I think there's some cool conversations as people are seeing that they're struggling with a lot of the same stuff. I'll tell you, I lose track of some of the conversations that different groups are having because we all sort of encounter a lot of the same practical issues, sort of the physical pain that goes along with posture, the feeling like time is taking an eternity, or it's blissful and it's going by quickly, right? Or we're getting a little sleepy, or we're having trouble finding the time to sit, or we just simply forget, right? These are all pretty universal experiences. And I think the cohorts are valuable because we get to hear what other beginners are also struggling with. So I just want to do a quick 5-minute review of the basic instructions. Just make sure we're all on the same page here, right? If we stick to the basics, we don't have to go back to the basics, right? So we're practicing Zazen. Zazen is a concentration practice. It's a breath awareness practice. It's a very simple form of meditation. By no means it's easy, but it's definitely simple, right? So we're going to sit either in a cross-legged position on with a meditation cushion or on a seiza bench, or we're going to sit in a chair. If you're sitting in a chair, we're going to put our feet flat on the ground, our legs at a 90-degree angle in front of us. We're going to support our own back. We're not going to lean back into something big and soft and comfy like this couch is. If you have a weak lower back like I do, you can take a little pillow, you can fold it up, you can put it behind the small of your back to help create some of that nice curve to your lower lumbar. We want nice open chest. You might remember the tip. John Kabat-Zinn, one of my favorite meditation instructors, he wrote Wherever You Go, There You Are. It's a wonderful book if you're looking for a good book on mindfulness practice. He recommends that people imagine a position of nobility or integrity. If you think about that, I love that. Like, right, your chest opens up, your spine elongates, like there's a lightness, a buoyancy to your posture that comes along. It works really nicely, right? So nice open chest. We're going to be nice and balanced, right? We don't want to be too far forward, too far back, left or right. We want to be balanced and settled into our posture nicely here. We continue that healthy spine all the way up to the top of our head. We tuck our chin in just a little bit so that we take any pressure off the base of our skull. We're going to keep our mouth closed because we're going to be breathing in and out through our nose, but that doesn't mean we need to clench our jaw, right? So we're going to be aware of any tension or tightness that we're creating. We're going to breathe in and out through our nose, and again, we're going to make a special effort that we're not controlling our breath, right? We're just letting breathing happen. It comes and it goes. You know, if our posture is good and our body is relaxed, our breathing will deepen. We'll start to feel our diaphragm expand. We'll feel our breath all the way down into our belly. And it'll be a natural progression that takes a little bit of time as we settle into the practice. We'll talk about this because we got several questions about this, but we do leave our eyes just like a quarter, a third, maybe even halfway open, just softly gazing at the floor a few feet in front of us. Just a soft gaze. We're not trying to let so much visual stimulation in that we're getting distracted, but we want to let enough light in that we stay awake, that we're present, that we're here for the practice. Right? And then our practice is very simple. We're just going to make a commitment that for the 3, 5, or 10 minutes that we're sitting for today, that we're going to sit absolutely still. And then we're going to recognize thoughts, and when they start to develop, we're going to recognize them, let them go, and return to the experience of the breath. And we're just going to repeat that over and over again. AJ is mentioning that she had some stuffed sinuses and she became a mouth breather for the meditation practice. Absolutely, that's going to happen, and that's the right adjustment, right? I think you have to be able to breathe. So if your sinuses are stuck, your sinuses are clogged. I mean, that just is what it is. It's tough breathing it out with your mouth. It sucks a lot of moisture out of your mouth. There's more swallowing. There's just more disruption. I think it's a little more challenging to get settled into practice. Not impossible, but certainly something that we all encounter. Anybody who meditates for a while, you're going to have sinuses, you're going to have allergies, you're going to have a cold during the winter, you're going to go on retreat and you're going to get a cold from all the people you're on retreat with. So practice, I think something really worth mentioning at this point, because it is a simple practice, right? We're just going to be, for a period of our 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to be breathing in and out. And our brain is going to be going bonkers, right? It's going to be planning what we're going to eat tomorrow afternoon. It's going to be thinking about what kind of clothes we should wear to our high school reunion. It's 3.5 months from now, right? There's no rhyme or reason, really. It's just thoughts bubbling up. Maybe we're stressed out. We have a lot of anxiety. Maybe we have some stressors in our life, and we're responding to those instances as well. And so maybe there's some emotional stuff that's coming up over and over again. A little different in the two of those. With the kind of just the meaningless bubbling stuff, our practice is to see our mind at work. And that's what our mind does. When it's not doing anything, when it's just kind of idling, it just throws up garbage, right? It's just constantly active, bouncing all around, right? Always looking for something to grab onto or distract ourselves with. And so our practice is just to see that, to accept it, not to judge ourselves or be critical, right? I think that's really important. I got a lot of questions about this week. Is how do I make this stop? And you don't. It's not about making it stop. It's about recognizing and letting it go, about not feeding into it, about stopping the insanity, right? Which is what happens when we're meditating. And what happens is we continue to practice both over the course of whatever period we're sitting, but over the course of days and weeks as our meditation practice starts to come to be a part of the way that we operate in the world, so the volume gets turned down on those thoughts a little bit. There's a little bit more space. There's some separation. We don't identify with those thoughts. We just see them as the activity of the mind, right? They impact us a little bit. They burn up less energy. They just kind of occur. I'll segue now into the more serious kind of repetitive thoughts, particularly those kind of things that are associated with when we're going through a stressful period, or we have some kind of loss, or we're struggling with something. We have something substantive, right? Because I'm sure you've seen it by now. If you've been practicing a couple times this week, you've seen, I've got meaningless garbage popping up, or it's daydreaming, or it's just a distraction. It's easy to let go of because it's very trivial. But we get the meaningful stuff too, right? We have, difficult relationships with loved ones, or we have problems at work, or there's money pressure, there's stuff that has very legitimate reason to keep surfacing, coming up again and again. And I think with these kind of thoughts, we have to treat them a little bit differently, right? If you remember from the beginner's instruction last week, we're not trying to suppress thoughts, we're not trying to cut them off, we're not trying to deny our reality or escape. Right. So for that particularly disturbing stuff, we just need to give the thoughts, the emotions, a little bit of space. We need to sort of set a wider ring around the difficult stuff. And sometimes we just have to play that stuff out thoroughly. And so I really encourage you, if you're encountering something difficult and it's coming up in your meditation practice, to use that place of non-judgmental awareness to just kind of really bring the emotions to surface, to look at it, to unpack it, to examine it, right? And then to let it go. And so it's a little bit of a slower process. You don't go, oh, I'm thinking of, let it go, and return back to the breath. You're going to have to walk through it. So my example from this week, and I blogged about this to the main Zen Happiness Project mailing list, is I got a really tough email from my boss, and it hurt my feelings. I was embarrassed. He had CC'd a couple of people on the email, and I felt ashamed because he was criticizing me in front of other people for something that I didn't think was really fair, right? So it's sort of a very strong emotional reaction. So when I was looking at this, and I blogged about my sort of immediate response, and I'll leave that to a different discussion. But the next day when I'm meditating, of course, it came up, right? Oh, here's this email from my boss. And it came up again, it came up again. So I had to kind of let it into the space, and I had to look at it and just what was I feeling? Why was I feeling that way? Okay, I was feeling hurt because I've been doing what I've been doing for 8 years, and I tend to do it well, and this particular project didn't turn out the way we wanted it to. So I was disappointed, but now it was compounded because I felt like I was letting my boss down. And then there's this embarrassment factor. There's other people on the email, so I feel like I'm being criticized in public, and that always has a little extra hurt to it. And then I have to, I spent a little bit of time reminding myself that I put forth good effort, and I responded kindly to my boss, and that we're taking steps to do a better job the next time around. And I kind of walked through that process for a little while, and I kind of kept looking at the emotions through the lens of meditation, and using that opportunity to investigate, to sort of create a little bit of separation, a little bit of distance from what I was experiencing. And after spending a few minutes doing that, then I was able to let it go and kind of return back to my breath. And so later on in my practice, I sit for a little while in the morning. When it came up again, after having gone into this deep dive on it, I was able to remind myself, I've really examined this. I've honored this emotion. I've recognized the difficulty. I've looked at it from a couple of different angles. I can let go of this now, right? We could talk a lot about the difficult emotions, right? Because that's the much more substantive stuff in our practice. It's that surface noise that's just constant. In the first couple of minutes we're meditating every day for the rest of our life, that'll always be, that little mind chatter will be happening. And we get pretty accustomed to letting that go because we see it for what it is, which is fairly trivial and inane. The more substantive stuff, we have to practice a little bit more gently, and we have to be a little bit more patient with ourselves, and really applying those principles of non-judgmental awareness and of acceptance are really critical. We got a few questions coming in here. Let's see. Della says, good point. The incremental opening of space is a more obtainable goal than ultimate meditation. Absolutely, I would agree strongly with that. Tracy says, I sometimes get frustrated when I do have something going on and have a thought ruminating in my mind. I like the idea of giving myself permission to sit with it and stop judging myself. Yeah, I mean, Tracy, I think that's great, and you need, you need to apply some judgment here, right? So Zazen practice is a concentration practice. We're trying to develop some focus, and the deeper we go into the practice, the more challenging it is going to be to let go of some of those things and to place our focus where we want it to be. But we need to make judgment calls in each of the opportunities as they arise, each time that we're sitting and meditating. Is this something that needs to be probed for a while, or is this something that can be let go of? And even just interjecting that awareness and making a choice about, am I going to focus on this emotion for a while, or am I going to return to my breath? That is meditation. That is Zazen. That is awakening to our life, right? It's choosing to participate in our life fully. It's not just running on autopilot and being bounced around by the thoughts and emotions in our head. So it's a different kind of practice than using our breath as the anchor, but we're using that emotion or that issue as the anchor. And that kind of ties into nicely. We'll talk about mindfulness and using different objects as the anchor for our practice in a few minutes. But that it is a mindfulness practice, is a real benefit of learning how to focus our mind where we want it to be. Because when we get a difficult emotional situation that needs to be worked with, we can not go down little side alleys. We can stick with it and place our focus where we want it to be. So this would be a great time. I've got some questions that came in from email that I'll answer, but this is a great time if you want to add your questions to the chat box here. I'll get around hopefully to all of them. I want to, in about 12, 13, 14 minutes, move on to the practice for the next week. The most common question I got was a question about our eyes in the meditation practice. And I love that people were asking about this, because it says to me that you were paying really close attention to the details of the posture and the body, and what were the kind of physical aspects of the practice that I think is really important here. So a number of people were uncomfortable with keeping their eyes sort of a quarter or a third of the way open, the soft gaze on the floor. And the simple answer is, it's perfectly fine to close your eyes, right? If you find that this is causing irritation and stress or tightness, or feels awkward, and you've given it a real shot, this idea of you're going to tuck your chin in just a little bit, you're going to let your upper eyelids close, 2/3, 3/4 of the way. You're maybe not going to pull your lower eyelids all the way up to meet them. That's sort of how I visualize it. So I have this soft, mostly closed eyes, softly gazing at the floor 2 or 3 feet in front of me. That feels very natural to me. It actually feels like if I go to close my eyes all the way, I feel like I'm exerting myself a little bit when I'm sitting upright. But when I have my eyes open like this, just a little bit, it takes the least amount of effort. But I've been practicing for 7 or 8 years, right? So it's natural that that would feel comfortable to me. So if you just can't get there, you can go one of 2 ways. One, you could open your eyes a little bit more. Maybe your eyes 2/3 of the way is open, or almost entirely open, and just very softly looking at the floor in front of you is the best way to do it. In very traditional Zen practice, particularly in the Rinzai school, Zen Buddhists sit facing a wall. And I actually, where I set up my cushion and incense and my little altar, I always set up right up against a wall. So I have my eyes open and I'm softly gazing. There's usually not much floor in front of me. It's usually my meditation, my zafu, the little square mat that I sit on, is usually right up against the wall, and I'm staring right at the base of the where the floor meets the wall there, right? And so that's great for me, because if I'm feeling a little sleepy and I need to open my eyes up a little bit and let more light in, I'm still not being distracted by anything, right? I'm not looking at like the pictures behind me that have all of these family significance and they're going to trigger memories and storylines, right? Trying to find something neutral. You can go the other way and you can close your eyes all the way. And that's perfectly fine too. We have to be a little bit careful when our eyes are closed, that it's a little easier to daydream, a little bit easier to get lost in thought and kind of carried away, right? So one of the reasons visual stimulation is helpful for the practice is it does, like being anchored to our breath, it helps keep us connected to the present moment. So you have to just kind of work with that. But, you know, it's all very pragmatic, right? This has got to be comfortable for you, right? Most of you who are going through this 21 days, if you do establish a daily habit, most of you won't be practicing Zazen. You will pick something else. You'll find another type of meditation that works better for you. And I applaud that, right? You have to make this your own. It's just a starting point. So take the suggestion, and if it works for you, use it. And if it doesn't, modify. There's really, you're the only person you can tell yourself if this is working for you. This kind of ties in, you heard me hint a little bit, I got some questions this week about sleepiness. You know, my response to this, you know, what do I do if I feel sleepy when I'm meditating, is I like to tell people we learn a lot from our meditation practice. And sometimes it teaches us really obvious things, like maybe we're sleep deprived, right? Something like 60% of Americans get less than 6 hours of sleep a night and are chronically sleep deprived, right? And we just don't function optimally when we're tired. So for many of us, when we sit and start to meditate, we learn a lot about ourselves. That our posture is bad, that we have anxious thoughts, that we plan or we worry or we obsess about things that happened in the past, or we're exhausted, right? The other thing that might be going on, other than the fact that you might just need to sleep more, is I think for many new meditators, one of the things we realize that's so radical about the practice is this is the first time in our life that we come to a stop, right? Usually the only time we go motionless before we start meditating is when we're going to sleep at night. So it makes sense that your body would say, oh, look, we've stopped moving. It must be time to release serotonin, or excuse me, melatonin in the brain and pass out. And that would be a very natural sort of habituated response on the body's part, right? So I guess what I'm saying is you have to tease out, am I overly tired and do I need to start sleeping more? Or is this just a response to being a new meditator and I don't have the habit of just sitting still yet, in which case that passes after a couple of days. But the answer is really the same for either of those. We open our eyes when we're feeling tired and we're meditating. There's a little bit of deeper breath, eyes a little more wide open. These are great ways to help keep our energy level up while we're meditating. I always take a shower first. So my morning routine is my alarm goes off, I stumble downstairs, I jump into the shower, brush my teeth, put on a pot of coffee, come up, sit, and start meditating, right? And there's something about that splash of water in my face that really does the trick for me. And honestly, some days I sit for a long period in the morning. Some days I realize when I'm sitting there, and I usually try to give myself 10-15 minutes first before I make this decision, but if I've been meditating for 10-15 minutes and I realize I'm still feeling exhausted, my practice for that day is I need to go back to sleep and sleep for another half an hour before I go to work instead of meditate. And I really see that for myself as a starting point to my mental health, is that I need a good night's sleep. I got some great questions about people who feel like they need to do something. And wow, this was so my experience when I first started meditating. I had it was so difficult to be still. I just felt like my entire body was telling me, you need to be moving, you need to be being productive, right? And I really had to spend a couple of weeks exploring what was underneath that. What was this drive? What was this inability to just sit still and be comfortable for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes? Why did I always need to be proving my value or worth to society by accomplishing something, right? So looking at that unease, really probing that, saying to myself, okay, I gave myself permission to sit here for 10 minutes. I set my timer. I don't have anything else to be doing. And yet I feel like I need to jump up and go. What's going on here, right? And using the practice, really, asking why, questioning, examining that, we'll learn a lot about ourselves. right? That's where the growth really starts to happen. We start seeing the conditioning that society and our families and our workplaces and media and even ourselves, the conditioning that have sort of constructed these impulses, this ego, this way of interrelating with the world that maybe isn't as healthy as it could be, right? So our practice is we start to, it's like a little, there's a thread sticking out of the cloth and it's irritating. We go to pick at it and we pull and we start to find there's a whole string there and it unravels something very interesting, and there's a lot of self-discovery that happens. So if you're having an impulse like feeling the need to be doing something while you're meditating, I'd really encourage you to just keep practicing and really examine that. There's something for you to be learned about yourself by following that question to the end. Looks like we got a few responses in here. I just want to check in with. Tracy says, my routine is very similar. I shower, get dressed, make up hair, then meditate before I go downstairs. If I go down first, I start the day and never get back. That's Tracy, 100%. So that's a nice excuse for me to talk a little bit about habit formation. We only did 2 emails on habit formation, but my 2 recommendations were around the weird trick about writing a commitment down. It has a great impact on actually executing a new habit. But we embedded in that email this idea of linking a habit to an existing habit. There was a Duke study, some research a few years back that suggests that over 40% of our daily activities are habit routines, right? And there's a particularly high concentration of the things that we do in the morning that are habituated, right? You start brushing your teeth on one side and you go through. I always shave. I start on the bottom part of my neck and I move this way, right? I mean, there's just, you put your right leg on for your left pant leg, right? We do things the same way in and out so that we don't have to burn up mental energy figuring out how to do these things. So taking a habit, tying it to an existing habit is a great way of forming that. And you're absolutely right. The strength in that is that we now have a whole lot of habit energy that kind of propels us into something. But if we miss it, we miss it too, right? Then we're back kind of into autopilot. So that's excellent. Amy says, yes, once I find some space, I feel like I should be doing something in it. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do with myself when it's quiet, even if only for a moment. I find myself thinking, now what? Which also ruins the brief moment of silence. Ooh, excellent, Amy, that's great. And again, really, the question, it's a little different for everybody. We all have, different motivators that drive that sense of dis-ease, right? So probe that, look at that, and I'll be very interested. Please email me over the next couple of weeks as you work with that emotion a little bit, and I'd love to hear what you've learned along the way. The last thing I'll say in response to the questions from this week, the habit formation is hard. There's a reason this is a 21-day program that we're doing together here, right? We're trying to launch ourselves into this new habit. And so we're giving ourselves a lot of tools and recognizing that it's hard, that it takes a lot of effort. This isn't going to just all click at once. We don't make a decision, oh, I'm going to start meditating every day now, and then just meditate every day for the rest of our life. Like, it doesn't work like that. We've all made New Year's resolutions. We've seen them come and go very quickly, right? It takes a lot of effort to start and maintain a meditation habit. So we're going to keep going at it these 21 days. Every day is a new day. It's a new opportunity to start and get engaged. But recognize that even for somebody like me who's loved meditation from the day he started it, it took me 2 years before I truly had developed a day in, day out daily meditation habit. And that was from, my intention from the first day I meditated was to do it every day. I got in the recommendation I was supposed to do it for 20 minutes a day. I thought, sure, I could do that. And it really was, again, nearly 2 years before I executed that. So let's It was a good week, and thank you everybody for who contributed to the conversations with your cohorts. There was just some really wonderful and supportive conversations in there. It was exactly the kind of thing that I hope to see from some of the cohorts. If the offer still stands, if you're not in a very active cohort and you'd like to be placed with some people who are actively emailing, please just email me and let me know, and within 24 hours I'll get you paired up with a new team. These next 14 days, we start building very quickly off of what we learned in week 1. So one of the things that's very cool about Zazen is just how flexible of a practice it is, right? It's stripped down, right? We're sitting still, we're letting go of thoughts, we're returning to the breath. We're using the breath as the anchor. I think that's the key word here, right, is anchor, the anchor for a practice, right? So it's all about developing this ability to see our mind at work, to recognize thoughts, let it go, and to be present to whatever we're trying to put our focus on. So in the course of this week, we're going to be talking about mindfulness activities. And these activities are basically meditation in motion. Instead of using the breath as an anchor, we're going to be using whatever the particular focus point we have chosen for that exercise is going to be. Sorry, just seeing here, Tracy's responding to saying she had some struggle with when her routine changes. For example, she did great during this week and then had house guests yesterday and skipped meditation. Absolutely. So Tracy, that's I don't have kind of a pat answer for this, because, where I get off, I'm really good. I probably have a 95% success rate in meditating on weekday mornings, right? The Monday through Friday, I go to bed kind of at a predictable time. I get up at a very predictable time. I have a predictable routine. I'm A minus getting to the cushion and meditating. I didn't meditate this morning. This Sunday. I had a wonderful night out with the girlfriend. We went to a barbecue. It was a later night than I usually am in for. I was running out to skydiving. Wasn't even until halfway through the day that I realized that I hadn't meditated yet, right? The skydiving is great. I'm at the drop zone all day, so I had some downtime. I got plenty of, short little meditations in, but I didn't have my sort of formal practice in the morning. And normally on a Sunday morning, I would meditate. So absolutely. I think my answer to that is the planning, right? I know when I'm going to bed at 12:30, I'm not going to be waking up at 4:45. It's just I'm not a Superman. I need a full night's sleep, and so some days we miss. Right? I think the idea of aspiring for a daily meditation practice is that hopefully we do it more days than not. And especially when we're first starting, if we meditate 2 or 3 days out of 7, that's amazing. It's miraculous. It's infinitely more times than we did before we started meditating. And then, even if we're meditating, we get into a routine of it, and we're meditating 5 or 6 days out of 7, I'd say that's pretty darn good, and you would find that to be pretty life-changing. So I don't believe in perfection. I just don't think it's out there. I love my girlfriend, Gabrielle, says that she loves that we call it practice, because for her, that's an invitation to accept the fact that it's not perfect. Right? You practice, there's some safety there, it's messy. It's not the performance at Carnegie Hall. When you're practicing, you're working on something, right? And this is a meditation practice. This is not meditation perfect, right? So, if your intention is good and you try to create the space for yourself, and we get there more often than not, and we celebrate the wins, but we do not beat ourselves up for not being perfect, because that's an ideal none of us are going to be able to attain. So sorry, getting back on track here with this, the tasks for this upcoming week. So this idea of mindfulness is really meditation in motion, right? We're going to use this skill that we're developing, this ability to recognize thoughts, let them go, and return our attention to where we want it to be, which you could summarize as we're developing the ability to focus with clarity, right? To be present might be another way of saying this, right? But also to be mindful is a way of saying it. Mindfulness is the experience of being fully present, right? So, why don't we do this? This is a little impromptu. I don't really have a great guided meditation for this, but I just want to take 2 or 3 minutes to do a little bit of a mindfulness meditation. And we're just going to check in with the senses. We're going to see how we can use different things other than our breath as an anchor. We're going to go with the sense perceptions as the anchor. We're going to use this as a little bit of a mindfulness practice. So let's just get settled here. I'm going to ring the bell 3 times to start and twice to conclude our meditation. We'll just do 2 or 3 minutes here. We'll experiment a little bit with mindfulness. Just take a second, settle into your practice. Let your shoulders relax. Let your muscles be at ease. Find the experience of the breath and just follow 2 or 3 breaths, in breath, out. Cool air rushing in, warm air rushing out. Let's turn our attention first to physical sensation. You can pick any kind of tactile sensation. It can be awareness of the breath moving across the tip of your nose, that cool air that rushes in, the warm, moist air that rushes out. It can be the sensation of the shirt resting on your chest as it moves a little bit with each breath. It can be the sensation of the weight of your body sitting on your butt, coming in contact with the chair or wherever you're sitting. Just pick a physical sensation and really examine it. Bring a sense of wonder, of curiosity. That'll help sharpen our focus. When you start to notice thoughts creeping in, just let go of the thoughts and return to the physical sensation that you've chosen to focus in on. We're going to turn our attention now to sound. There's no such thing as silence. I've been to many monasteries, some up in the hills and mountains, and you'd be amazed at just how noisy it is, even in some of the most remote areas. Just turn your attention now. Do you hear the rush of an air conditioner, the hum of a refrigerator, the sound of traffic, the bark of a dog? Again, use sound as the anchor, and when thoughts start to creep in, just let go of the thoughts and return to a non-judgmental awareness of the sounds. Let the sounds come and go. Don't cling on to them. Don't start to create a story about them. Just observe, witness. Last, we're going to do this exercise with sight. You can just open your eyes. Maybe other than the computer screen or the cell phone, whatever you're watching this on. Pick a neutral item in the room. Simply observe it. Again, don't get caught up in any storylines or thoughts or memories associated with the item. Just take in the visual stimulation. So I'd be a little curious to hear some responses to those of you who are in the session here. If you want to just share a little bit with the chat, with the group about what that experience was like. Did you find it difficult? Was it easy for you to tune in on some of the senses? Was it challenging? Did you find it distracting? There's no right or wrong. There's no A's. I'm not giving out any gold stars, right? There's no success or failures here. There's just the experience that you had with it. I'd be curious to hear what your experience with that is. You know, one of the things that we're doing when we're creating a space for our practice, and you know, if you go back to the beginner's instruction from last week, we talked about meditation is not an escape, right? It's not the destination either, right? It's a practice for how we want to live our life. And part of what you start seeing when we translate from Zazen, where we create this nice, safe, quiet place for ourselves, right? Maybe we've got a candle lit and a little incense. We're in our bedroom. Maybe it's just before the sun has come out. Everybody in the house is still asleep, right? We're picking our breath and we're focusing on breath, and we're letting go of all other thoughts and emotions. We're just keying in on that one experience, right? Well, what we're doing when we're doing that is trying to give ourselves as simple of an environment as possible, so we're unencumbered by other distractions while we're trying to develop this ability to focus, to place our attention, our mind where we want it to be, to learn how to take control of our attention and awareness, right? So when we get into an exercise like mindfulness and we're welcoming the chaos and the noise and the sounds of the streets and the distractions and the different stimulations that are coming in, it's more difficult because each one of those stimulations come with thoughts and feelings. It generates something, right? It sparks something. There's like a chain effect that happens, right? So we need to spend some time doing the very simple, maybe easier practice of just, zazen and focus on our breath. But then we also need to start taking that skill off the cushion and experience that in the line of fire that is our real life, right? One of the most challenging exercises that we'll do this week is trying to mindfully listen to a conversation. And that's where you really see how reactive the brain is, right? Somebody's saying something to us and we don't just listen. We judge it, we criticize it, we compare it to other things. It sparks visual memories, right? I mean, there's a whole storyline. There's a lot happening when we're listening to somebody talk. Right? So this idea of just being able to listen and be present and to let go of all of that other stuff that happens, those reactive things that happen, and just listen, it's a real challenge, right? So this week is really dedicated to this idea of mindfulness, of our meditation in motion, bringing us what we're learning on the cushion out into our day-to-day life. And there's a reason it's linked with stress reduction, because this awareness is very soothing, right? There's some natural, sort of neutral place that comes with awareness, right? Awareness doesn't have a feeling associated with it, right? Feelings happen within the context of awareness, right? So when we can start kind of rooting our day-to-day experience in our awareness as opposed to in the feeling, when we kind of create this open sort of spaciousness that flows through our day with us as we're a little more dedicated to our meditation practice, stress reduction happens very naturally, right? We'll also do some exercises in the course of the week that really are about identifying and letting go of stress and anxiety. We'll do things like body awareness and seeing, the physical manifestations of stress and dealing with those. But really, by starting to take that awareness off of our meditation cushion and into our day-to-day life, that mindfulness, that's where the miracle of stress reduction actually happens. I just want to check in here with some of the responses. Della had many distractions, texts and emails coming through. Had to choose to ignore them in order to guard my meditation space. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that is meditation, right? Is choosing, okay, there's this stimulation, I'm letting it go, I'm returning my focus right here, right? So sometimes the distractions almost are beneficial to us, right? Because they give us something to work with. Suzuki Roshi, who wrote Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, talks about them as mind weeds, right? That we should be grateful for the mind weeds that come up, because pulling these weeds out, these distractions, we plant them back into the soil and it nourishes our practice. So it's excellent. Tracy's done this exercise before, tends to imagine she woke up in somebody else's body and trying to experience every sense possible to feel out what the body is like. Wow, Tracy, that's really cool. I appreciate that. That's a nice way of entering into that practice. I'm going to steal that. If you have any links or to guided meditations that have done that, I would love to hear some other examples of that. That's a cool way into it. Amy, still hard to have her eyes open. Using the sound was cool. My dogs are panting from our walk. Usually they're distracting, but noting that I was hearing them was easier than tuning them out. Very nice, very nice. I like that. Something soothing about a dog panting, something rhythmic about it too. Tracy was amazed at the number of sounds when she thought her environment was pretty quiet. I mean, Tracy, this is why I love meditation, right? This idea that we're waking up to our life. The way our brain works, we're missing the experience of our life. When we're not in the moment, when we're lost in thought, we're missing the only place that our life actually happens, right? So that realizing, oh my gosh, there's this amazing sensation when I'm breathing, and there's all these noises, and the house is creaking, and the birds are chirping, and wow, this is all beautiful. This is always available to us, right? And we're cut off from it when we're living in between our ears. So I love that. That's great. Jeb says, mindfully listening is something I've been working on for a while now, sometimes really hard to do. Absolutely. Tracy got the idea from watching Avatar. That's awesome. Tracy, that's great. Thank you. I'll give you credit when I'm using it as a mindfulness exercise in the future, but that's absolutely wonderful. I appreciate the example. So we're getting to the top of the hour. So I want to wrap up. If anybody has any questions after this, I'm happy to stick around and we'll answer them. Thank you again, everybody, for dealing with the technical difficulties. It was pretty cool that you guys hung out in spite of that. So please, this next week, keep checking with your cohorts. Keep trying to dedicate 3, 5, 10 minutes to your practice. No judgment, no criticism here, right? We're all just doing the absolute best we can. Let's celebrate the successes and focus on the positive. And then take a chance to really work with some of the examples that we're going to work through this week. I think this is where it gets fun. We're starting to see how this impacts our day-to-day life, and we start finding out how busy people can meditate even when you don't have time to find a meditation cushion. So again, I'll stick around in the chat box for a while here. Otherwise, you can, of course, email me at ZenHappinessProject@gmail.com. Any questions, and it was great practicing with all of you. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.